2x2 formation. Let's change now. We go racing for the first time this season. 3 hours of GT action. It's go.
It's very tight as they come down. Group of cars coming in. This has all got trouble written all over it. This is G3 cars.
Drop downhill there, head towards the Aqua Minerale. Imola, of course. There's another one off through the gravel. As wide as possible as they drop downhill, putting that truck inside line. Yes,
he did.
Through he goes.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome back then to another Apex Online Racing stream. Yes, we are back for Season 12 then here in the GT3 League, and we are covering the Tier 2 action tonight here at Silverstone for what I'm sure will be another action-packed filled evening of racing. And joining me in the comms box once again for this season is my good friend Tim360Lunn. How you doing, buddy?
Good evening, mate. Yeah, doing well. Glad to be back for the first Tier 2 race of 2023. It's been a long old wait this time around, hasn't it? I always forget how long the Christmas break is, so I imagine all of these guys will be desperate to get back on track, back in the Tier 2 setup. So it should be a good one. Silverstone this evening always sees some pretty good racing, plenty of places for overtakes, nice wide track. With some surprisingly technical corners and some really fast sweeping corners that really test the bravery of these guys. So with a lot of new guys on board, it's going to be a pretty exciting first race, I think, John.
Yeah, I think absolutely, without a shadow of doubt. We've seen some of our Tier 2 drivers from the past being promoted up to Tier 1, which has been great, of course. Last season's champion, Jamie Nuttall, was in the Tier 1 grid last night and did fairly well. Definitely held his own, and it's been quite a nice experience seeing some of those drivers, working their way up through Tier 2 and then going on into Tier 1. And we've now got the next bunch. We've got some familiar names from last season. We've got the likes of Giacomelli, Christus Podens, Neuwirth, recognised in all of this as well. We've got Vince van Meerveld and
Fan favourite.
Yeah, fan favourite. Quite often, quite a bit of support for him. Matt York is back as well. And speaking of Matt York, actually, we were having a little bit of a conversation about this yesterday. Switching over to the Audi, very nice livery as always for that York Sports racing car, but. Yeah, he's gone for front-engine cars. Typically in the past, he was in the Bentley for a bit. I think we saw him in the Aston as well. Now he's decided to switch up in that 65 car and go over to the Audi. So that could be an interesting one to see how he ends up grasping that different platform.
Yeah, very, very different car. As we normally say, I think pretty much every time I see an Audi on track, I say quite a difficult car to drive in some respects. Got to be very careful with the traction control. It's really quite invasive on your driving style, so going to be very different to what he's used to with these front-engine rear-wheel drive setup cars. But it is one of the newer cars on the game, especially compared to the Bentley, which is really not that sort of favourable these days. It sort of in real life is really diminishing now. Bentley no longer support it. Obviously, the Aston Martin, the current Aston Martin that we're using in game, it's been around a little while now as well. So I think maybe he went for just something a bit fresh, a bit of a change. He did struggle a little bit last season. We normally see him a little bit higher up the grid all throughout the series, but he was a little bit further down. So I wonder if maybe he just thought, let's have a fresh take, go for something different. And that's what we like to see in Tier 2 is people will go for that bit of a gamble and they'll do it. And it's really good to see him back again. So yeah, so in the Audi this season, hopefully he'll have a bit more luck than last season.
Yeah, without a doubt. And yes, I know that there's quite often quite a bit of support for the good old Bentley, or the Boatley, the more friendly name that's often given. And yeah, it has fallen out a little bit from competition, which is a bit of a shame. And yeah, much like some other cars that have kind of been shuffling around in recent BOP changes, we've sort of seen some resurgences of cars from the past that used to never be very strong, like the Honda. There was a time when no one would drive the Honda because it was very difficult to get pace out of it. It was unpredictable, it wasn't particularly fast. I remember it had hideous amounts of turbo lag. I think it's still got that to some degree, but people have managed to kind of master the TT system in that car a bit and extract a bit of extra pace out of it more consistently. But now, Honda, very much a common car to see on the grid. And in Tier 2, we've actually got quite a nice balance of the Honda. We've got a decent amount of Porsches. Of course, Porsches always have been very quick. BMW starting to make a bit of resurgence again, seeing those cars run quite quickly as of late. Ferraris, despite some of their wonky suspension physics at times, have been in finer form. And the Mercedes as well. Quite a decent amount of Mercedes on this field in comparison to previous seasons, because it had quite the overhaul in one of the recent BOP changes. A lot of power buffs given to that car, as well as also some aero changes. So it's nice to see, I think, quite a mixed up grid for this one. We've got a nice balance of, I think, most manufacturers, which is great to see.
It is really good to see, and I'm glad to see the Mercedes back, as that is my main car that I use when I'm racing myself. I actually bothered this time. Normally, every season I say, if I was in one of these tiers, I'd be in the absolute lowest tier. They'd have to come up with a lower tier just for me. But this time round, I thought for the sake of the viewers, I would actually give it a go. And I gave it a go, and I came up in tier 9. So I was quite pleased with that. Obviously, I can't race because it's happening right now. But I just thought, you know what? Let's see what happens. Let's see how I do. So yeah, I was tier 9. So you get an idea of the difference. But I will say, I normally drive the Mercedes. Since the latest Balance of Performance update, it is a different car. If you have used the Mercedes in the past and you've thought to yourself, "Oh my God, this thing is awful. It drives like it's in the wet, even though it's in the dry." Loads of like oversteer when you put your foot down, and masses of understeer when you try and go into a corner. Give it another go. It is a very different beast at the moment. It is a joy to drive that car.
Yes, I have almost a little bit of personal regret on this note, as someone who last sported the Mercedes in their last driving season of AOR, and that was back when it wasn't exactly the most ideal of choices. I would be very curious to see how it drives now, but yeah, it's great to see that car is coming into a bit more of a competitive fashion again, because it really did take a big hit in the early stages when it came into ACC. It was actually pretty strong, but as like a lot of whenever these cars are added for the first time, they're usually very competitive. We saw it with the BMW as well, and then a big old nerf, and then gradually over time it's kind of worked its way back into competition. But it's great to have that mix. I've also seen in the chat that unfortunately it looks like Alexa Gates isn't going to be racing tonight. I'm very sorry to hear about all of that. Hope that you are able to recover soon and we have you back on the grid in due course. But lovely to have you in the chat at least. You'll be able to get a bit of a grasp of the field that you should be up against in due course. And we'll see with all of our drivers this evening how they fare. We're currently having a bit of a look at one of the Mercedes that we were just talking about. Chris Zikos, a few people have already come into the pits as practice is on its way out, and then we're making our way over to qualifying, and Chris, one of the last cars on circuit. So this gives drivers to get their eye in, make those final little setup changes, and to get everything dialed in for qualifying. Now, obviously you said that you did a little bit of running yourself in terms of going through those hot stints, the evaluation race and all that for Tier 9. When you're building up towards a race, and you've got that last bit of practice and you're about to go into qualifying, do you use that last bit of practice to make refinements to your race setup and make sure that you're happy with absolutely everything in terms of the thing that's going to potentially make up the more impactful segment of your race weekend as such? Or do you go and try to eke out everything on that qualifying setup so you start as far up the grid as possible? What sort of route do you take?
For me, normally, I do all my pre-race practicing at full race weight. So I work out immediately sort of what fuel I'm going to be needing as soon as I possibly can, and I always just drive at full weight. I always think to myself, it gives me a better idea of what I'm actually going to be able to do in a race. So I do all my practice at full weight, and then when it comes to the last, let's say, you get these last 10 minutes of practice or last 20 minutes of practice, I will then, with the exact same setup, I'll shed all the fuel out of it, just use a tiny little bit, and then I'll basically just go out there and just throw the car around the track and see what happens. Sometimes you gain a load more time. Other times, especially in something like the Porsche, having less fuel can actually make the thing understeer more. So it tends to be that the Mercedes just kind of comes alive a bit more on low fuel. It's why it can be quite nice if you have to do, as we do here, a mandatory pit stop for tyres. In that second stint, you've got half the amount of fuel, you're fresh tyres. After a few laps, the car really comes to life. And we saw it last season as well. The Mercedes really seemed to come alive, especially at, I think it was Watkins Glen, the second half of the race. I think it was Morgan McCall. Absolutely flew around that circuit towards the end. But yeah, that tends to be what I do. I will go for a sort of full race weight practice and then just a very short amount of time spent hot lapping with as little fuel as possible. Otherwise, you get into the race, if all you've done is practice with no fuel and suddenly you go into your first race, turn one, and your car just feels totally different. So I always think it's better to prepare for the worst, and then you can sort of mould, you can work around the lower fuel.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that is just me, but I'm not very fast.
But I agree. I think that, yeah, everyone has slightly different approaches, but I think, yeah, the majority, I think they put more investment of time into their race trim than their quality trim, which of course makes sense, because particularly if you've got a race that's actually fairly substantial in length, that is going to be what ultimately makes difference, and obviously points are scored on Sunday. And yes, and somebody in the chat has already made the observation. We've got Angus Fender that is in Tier 2 this season, so I do believe he was in Tier 1 last season, and it also made the switch over to Mercedes. It'll be interesting to see how he gets on in this car, and yeah, this is not going to be the best circuit for Mercedes. Whilst it is definitely better, whilst the front downforce has certainly improved over what it used to have, it is still a little bit on the understeery, kind of boaty side with all that, and the fast-flowing nature of Silverstone doesn't quite tend to be as cooperative, shall we say, to the Mercedes chassis. But be interesting to see how Angus gets on in all of that. There is Mercedes just up ahead of him. I can't quite pinpoint which car that is. I think that's number 23, if my reading skills are correct. And yeah, that would be... Yeah, Alejandro Avilés in the number 23 Mercedes. So I have to see how they all fare. Currently making their way out of Club Corners, about halfway around the circuit. This, of course, is the start-finish straight for events such as Formula 1. But on ACC and for GT3 racing, we have the old start-finish straight, which, in my personal opinion, is the better one out of the two. I do like the classic features of this Silverstone circuit, and having that first run towards Copse Corner, it certainly gives us a lot of side-by-side action on the first lap.
It's a really nice, it's a really good start. You've got there's plenty of runoff as well on the outside of the turn. Obviously, it's quite a hard right-hander for turn one. Having that bit of runoff, which you can use, and obviously you will get penalised, obviously if you use it to your advantage. But if you need to run a bit wider there on turn one, it's a nice little bit in. But obviously then you're facing Maggots and Beckett's, and that is not to be messed with.
Yeah, that is...
first flying lap as well. Just going to just see what his time is as he comes across the line. So our first driver across the line has come in with a 1:57. So I'm expecting there should be some improvements. Terrifyingly, that's like 3 or 4 seconds a lap quicker than me. Although he's pitted immediately. Car number 23 has pitted immediately. So was he running enough fuel just to do an outlap and one flyer?
Either that, or maybe he's got some sort of sense of imbalance in the car. Maybe the pressures weren't quite right. You know, sometimes these cars, especially around a high loading circuit for the corners around here at Silverstone, the track and the track temperature and air temperature, I think in ACC, with the way that tyre pressures and temperatures tend to vary, it seems more be a function of just pure ambient temperature than track temperature, and the subtle changes in that can have a huge impact on the way that translates to pressures. That changes the whole kinematics of the vehicle, and yeah, maybe it's just subtle small changes when you're trying to eke out those extra few tenths, even down to the hundredths and the thousandths, to get up as far as you can on this grid, that yeah, in this case Avilés decided to go to the pits and have another go. He's already back out on circuit. Meanwhile, someone has put in a stellar effort on their first flyer. Lois Rainier in the number 83 Porsche, for driving for SGL Esports, 57.0, and that is a mighty time. I'll tell you what though, someone who's not looking to be outdone, Voltek Neuwirth in the Aston Martin 63 car was going purple there for a second. He's on quite a big improvement at the moment, so we could see him jump up the order, as I think Rainier has just backed out of his lap and has had Vubbling slot in just behind him as well. So yeah, we'll have to see how all that translates, but a few different manufacturers trying to make their way up to the pointy end of his grid at the moment. It's a bit Porsche dominated right now, but I think Neuwirth might have something to say about that.
I think also Dan Brewer, he's 0.5 up at the moment. He did a 1:57.7 last time round, so he's not going to be on pole, but that's a big improvement, 0.6 now. So he is very much starting to reel in those top 5 times. We could really see quite a big jump from him. I'm trying to look a bit further down at who's Jay Fang with a massive improvement again, and Corner Crack or MVP racing for Team Allied Racing. Be interesting to see how he goes. I think a lot of these drivers with massive improvements. Again, this is obviously only their second or third flying lap, so it's be interesting to see how the entire grid sort of goes. Some cars take a little bit longer to turn the tyres on, get themselves up to temp and running properly.
Yeah, I'm just keeping an eye on Daniel Brewer. He was purple for a moment there as he went through the loop and into Aintree, because he is right now on target for a 57.0, which would be right up there with challenging Rainier for provisional pole. So it's a mighty lap so far from the BMW driver. I have to see what he does when he brings it across the line. He's still just about on that improvement, 8/10 now, so it could be a mighty effort, but he's lost a little bit on the exit. Number 91 car trying to go for his shot at glory. It's still 7.5 minutes to go. What's it going to be for the Beamer? Oh, just about 17,000 slower than Rainier to the Porsche, still displacing its German counterparts at the front. But now at least we do have Porsche, BMW and Aston Martin for those top 3 positions rather than complete Porsche domination. So great effort there from the number 91, but still not quite enough to displace Rainier in that 83 car.
Yeah, I mean, that was a massive effort, wasn't it? Oh, Giacomelli on quite a good lap as well. He's 0.8 up. His previous was a 157, well, basically 157.8, but he's 0.8 up at the moment. So again, this could be another driver that we see make quite a large improvement. Did pretty well last season as well, if I remember correctly.
I do believe he actually took a race win somewhere. I do remember Giacomelli, part of the SPQ racing team, regular participants also in the endurance series on AOR. And do you remember somebody in the comments, in the chat, saying he was a bit of a dark horse and he had a bit of a back and forth when it came to general pace. But I do believe that he took one victory during the season. I'm just trying to go back through. Paul Ricard, that sounds familiar.
It was race 3, because he came 7th overall in the championship. He was in the Audi last year, so gone across to a slightly more flighty mid-engine car this time round. But yeah, he had a mixed results. But that first place was a real sort of a feather in his cap, I think, that last season. So apart from that, his best was a 8th position. I think it was at Nürburgring or somewhere. Annoyingly, I can't actually see what track it was. I can just see the flag of where it was. So, and there was 2 German tracks last season, so can't remember which was which off the top of my head. It's been a little while. All that Christmas pudding's gone to my head.
The winter break will do that to you. Just looking at Giacomelli, though, he is rounding out his lap in the Ferrari. Only good enough for 24th. But you can see how tight the margins between drivers are on these laps. Purple at the moment is Louis Vubbling in the 991 Porsche. Currently 0.2 of a second up on his previous lap time. And that would see him sneak into the 56s to be the first driver to do it if he can round this one out. Coming in towards Brooklands Corner then, we'll go on board with the Porsche as he comes through this very tricky section of the lap. Double apex approach through Luffield Corner. To go wide in the middle of the corner, bring it back on the power as early as you dare. He's 0.3 up, so I think it's going to be good enough to go to provisional pole for the 991 car. Louis Vubbling, what's it going to be? It's going to be a 56.867. Mighty effort there from Louis in that car. So that is an absolute blinder of a lap, and with only just under 5 minutes left of this qualifying session to go, Rainier, who has been the provisional pole sitter for quite a chunk of this session so far, suddenly finds himself with quite a bit more to find in that lap if he wants to snatch that away from the 991 car.
That is a huge margin between first and second there as well. If you look at the timings, you think there's nothing in them. I mean, all the way down, we're into like the 20s. Hang on, I'm going to scroll all the way down and see where we get to. So the top 30, all within a second of each other. Okay, it's actually all the way down to 37th place.
Oh dear, sorry to cut you off there. Rainier's had a moment. Rainier's had a moment somewhere. That's very awkward. Or was he just trying to get out of the way of other cars? I think maybe he was just trying to get out of the way in the middle sector. I tell you what, that's not the best preparation for his lap, because he would have dirtied his tyres and have cooled down a bit. So, not the ideal way that he would have wanted to start that one. I thought he had a bigger moment than that, but thankfully not causing any chaos too much, other than to my own concerns and all of that.
Yeah, I don't think they've ever updated it, but the car doesn't actually take any damage in hitting the floor. It's one of those weird things. So you can actually jump the car and land, and the physics doesn't affect it for some reason. It won't actually do any damage that you have to repair in the pit. But yeah, I look back on the replay, it looked like he just put his tyre on the grass, went a little bit wide on a right-hander, then couldn't get the car back again for the left-hander, and in the end I think he just admitted he wasn't going to get it back on track. But sadly,
sorry, it's a moment that we have caught on screen in all of that. Louis Vubbling, who I was just keeping an eye on, because he was on a big improvement again to set an even better lap into Brooklands Corner. The back end on that Porsche, snappy as always, has just completely gone from underneath him. And yeah, that lap that he was on target for immediately snatched away from him, only 2 corners away from bringing that one home. So by the sounds of it, even though they might be sitting in first and second at the moment, those Porsches being a little bit on the tricky side to drive. I tell you what, Nicholas Hertz, another one of the Porsches, number 14 car, down in 8th place at the moment. This could be another lap in the 56. I don't think it's going to be enough for pole for the time being, but it is good enough for the front row for the number 14 car for Visceral Esports. So we're back to Porsche 1, 2, 3 and all of this, but they are proving tricky to drive, it seems.
Just a quick one. Down in 21st place at the moment, Florens. Well, actually, say he's 0.3 up, which doesn't sound like much, but that's quite a big improvement when you think about how incredibly tight the field is. So there might be someone that sees himself go up the grid a fair old bit. It looks like he's in a Red Bull liveried. Is it a Red Bull livery? Yes, it is a Red Bull liveried Honda at the moment.
It's the Alpha Bull, so it's obviously Honda powering both Red Bull and AlphaTauri in recent times. So yeah, very unique livery on that car. I do like it. It's a very different approach to that.
It's another split livery, isn't it? We had one last year where me and you got very confused because there was it was red on one side and yellow on the other. That might have been in the Endurance Championship. It was a group of Audis, and every time you glance, oh, was there an improvement there?
I think it was a bit slow, and I've got a feeling he may have invalidated the lap somewhere as well. I think he backed out of it at the end. But yes, it was only a 58.3 in the end, so not good enough for an improvement, unfortunately. Someone is on a bit of an improvement right now that could be in a competitive spot. We've got Richie in the 418 car, currently sitting in P3, so another Porsche added to that now quadruplet group to the front of the field. Just over 60 seconds left in this session, and he's got a 10th up, about halfway through the lap at the moment, just going through Abbey and into Farm now. But if he's able to maintain a margin, Nicholas Ho, who was that? Jay Fang just did a huge improvement there in the BMW, and Corner Crack in another one of the Porsches. 2 cars suddenly making their way in towards the top 5 there. Richie, though, now going purple on the exit of Aintree, and this might start to give that 991 car of Bubbling a little bit to be concerned about.
Yeah, that's a huge run. I'd say 0.2 up at this stage in qualifying is pretty intense. Just having a little bit of a flick through as well, just trying to check out some of these custom liveries that people have made. Some very bright and colourful cars.
Oh, Vubbling's gone to the pits. So it won't be any more improvements from Aracon Polsage. I think Nicholas Herr's just done the same. He's backed out of it. So Richie may be the last challenger to displace him. He's lost time, though. And it's still an improvement, only good enough for P3. And he has got a chance, though, to go for another lap, but he doesn't. I don't think he's got the fuel for it. So Richie pulls aside. So does Corner Crack. And I don't think there's going to be anyone else in this session. There's a couple of improvements remaining, but I think Pole is likely to go the way of the Porsche of Bubbling. We've got Florens on a big improvement, 3/10 for him as he hits the timing beam in that split Audi. Good enough for the top 10. That was a very solid effort.
Yeah, that was a really big improvement and at just the right time as well, wasn't it?
Giacomelli as well, 5/10 up for him in the Ferrari, so that could see him get up to the pointier end of the grid. It would be just outside of the 57s, I think, but he's got a bit back and forth, maybe tighter on that line through Luffield than he would have wanted. Have to see what the Italian does. He makes his way towards the line. A couple of other drivers also doing their final efforts. For the number 6 car, though, is good enough for P8. So last-ditch effort from the SPQ Racing Team car, and gets himself, by the looks of it, a solid top 10 position.
Really good effort, to be fair, isn't it? I think 30th place is still out there and is on improvement. There's a couple of guys. Oh, actually, hello. 19th place, which is Reinders, 0.3 up. And so is Boucher as well, 0.2 up. So, you know, there's still going to be some shuffling. The bulk of qualifying's over, but I think there's can't read out the top 10 quite yet, I don't think, just in case. I say that 0.3 up now from car number 518. So one of the BMWs, there's a bit of traffic around him, but I think he's clear enough that he should be able to put in a decent time all the way to the end. stretching the legs of the BMW, cuts as much off as possible. God, I don't think you could have fitted anything but into the top 10. Great effort. Just skims that pit wall.
Oh no, he was displaced. Nigel Sharon in the 912 car snuck in there at the end in the Porsche. He was only up by a tenth, but it was enough to end up displacing Paul Boucher, who thought he got the job done in the 518 BMW, but only be good enough for P11 in the end. So, yeah, very tight qualifying session. Look at that, after all that, the man that was at the top of the timing sheets for so long, Lois Rainier in the 83, finished in P6. So, I imagine that he may be a little bit disappointed with that, not putting together the laps that he wanted at the end of that session.
I say, 42 of our drivers are within 1 second of each other in qualification.
Incredible.
42. That is ridiculous. I mean, you know, obviously there's tier 1, but this is what we say about tier 2. You don't get quite so many of like the big YouTube egos, but the racing here is, I'll come out and say it, is better than tier 1. These boys have put in sweat and tears into getting here, and they show up and do things like that. 42 of them within a second of each other. I mean, and that is why they have the tier system. I know there can be some people have issues with it sometimes. Don't understand why people end up in certain places, because it's not just done off overall speed. It's also done off of previous racing experience. If you're a complete bully on track, you're going to get put in a slower league, or, you know, you're going to get sort of put elsewhere. But just 42 people within a second of each other, and they only had 15 minutes to do that. That is insane. Yeah, just seeing it in the chat, Norris U. These guys, they are pretty much the tippy top. They are maybe half a second off the tier 1 guys, if that. Some of these guys are from tier 1. Some of them are just making their way up through the ranks. So, yeah, it's really a case of very, very similar pace to tier 1. It's just a case of maybe they don't have quite so much experience, maybe not quite as consistent, but the pace is nigh on the same. These guys in the endurance season usually are in the tier 1 for the endurance. So it's a really good mix. So you're still watching esport level racing at this point. It's just, if tier 1's full, then you've got to go somewhere, and it's tier 2.
Yeah, I mean, you know, and you're absolutely right. You know, we had Krzysztof Makowski in tier 2 last season. He was a tier 1 regular, and, you know, I think he ended up finishing second in the tier 2 championship. So you can really quite often have, you know, either ex-tier 1 drivers in tier 2, vice versa. I know we've got Kevin Niles that's come from tier 1 into tier 2 this season, and quite often there's a fairly seamless kind of transition between those two fields. And yes, the average pace is going to be, of course, that little bit faster in tier 1. But as we have seen time and time again, that the action that tier 2 puts together could very easily meet that of tier 1. And sometimes, because maybe that these drivers see it as a bit more of a proving grounds, you know, they didn't quite get tier 1, that might be a lot of these drivers' objective for next season. So they want to put together a good season. They want to bank in good points. They want the championship results. Tier 1, sometimes you can get that little bit of additional pressure where they want to be further up the order in tier 1, and that sometimes results in a little bit of desperation and maybe some bigger instance. Whereas tier 2, quite often, we've had some absolutely fantastic hard but fair racing that has really shown the tier 1 guys how to do it. Hopefully that is not a horrible commentator's curse going into the first race of this season, but our 42 drivers on the grid for tonight, I am sure will give us a very good bit of racing over the next 60 minutes. So, your pole man for today then, Louis Bubbling in the 991 Porsche, the first of 4 Porsches, very nicely done, followed up by Nicholas Hurt, good effort there from him for Visceral Esports in the 14 car, followed up by Richie in the 418, and then Corner Crack in the 420 car, and then the first non-Porsche, but still sporting one of the German manufacturers, Jay Fang in the BMW. He's made his way, I believe, over from a couple of cars over the previous season. He spent a long time in the Mercedes. I've seen him also in the McLaren. He decided to go with the BMW, which I think will be a fairly handy car for him today. Lois Rainier, not quite putting together the lap that he would have wanted in the end of all of that, I don't think. Starts in 6th, with Daniel Brewer in the 91 starts in 7th. Daniele Giacomelli in the first of the Ferraris. Good effort there from him. Of course, we saw George Boothby extracting great pace out of that that car as always, starts in P8. Voltec Neuwirth in the 63 car starts P9, with Nigel Tarrant who had that last-ditch effort to get into the top 10 in for the 912. Hugo Bochet in the 518 BMW starts in P11 with Bart Raven in 12th place, who I saw has had a bit of support in the chat already. And speaking of the BMWs just for a moment, I'm afraid, unfortunately, much like the lack of any Boatleys, we are also missing the unfortunate big boy of the 2017 variant, I believe, of the BMW. Although, ironically, whilst that car weirdly feels much larger because of how terribly it drives, it is actually a smaller car versus this 2022 car. So, very interesting sort of aspects of how these cars feel versus their actual size. Max Florence in the Honda starts in 13th, with Yash Reinders in the 14th position. Alessio Mellis, Tier 2 regular over the last couple of seasons, starts in 15th place for the number 15 car. Simone Seminara starts in 16th, with Christos Poden starting in 17th there. We saw him challenging for the championship a couple of seasons ago between himself and Daniel Pashka, and that car was a repeat race winner in that season. Had a bit of unluckiness during that meant that he couldn't take the championship in the end, so he might be a little bit disappointed being down in 17th. Jimmy Holm starts in 18th place, with Krzysztof Stachecki starting in 19th. Denis Grabowski in 20th position, with Mikhail Ermakov 21st. Huna Horky in 22nd position in that 43 car. Jean-Sebastian unfortunately, that text is too small on my screen. Casangina starts in 23rd. Kieran Patterson 24th. Alejandro Avale in the 25th spot. Yaroslav Rehevsky in 26th. Abbas Santima in 27th. Josh Waring 28th. Pascal Petris in 29th. Matt York in that Audi car starts in 30th. Vince van Meerveld starts 31st. Xavier Rimbaud 32nd. Valentin Rousseau 33rd. Victor Martin in 34th. Barnabas Fazakas in the Lamborghini, I think maybe our only Lamborghini in the field, starts in 35th. Kevin Niles in the 444 Aston Martin starts in 36th. Dennis Shops starts in 27th, with Angus Fender down in 38th. Arnaud Brun in 39th, with Hans Peter rounding out the top 40. And then Chris Zikos, Dan Smith, and Ilya Ratiani rounding out the field down 43rd. So we might have had a late joiner after qualifying and all of that. And that will be your grid of many a car for this evening's action. What a list of names that is.
I mean, fair play for doing that all in one hit. I think this might be our fullest grid that I think I've ever seen in Tier 2. With 43 drivers, that does feel pretty substantial to me. I think that's the fullest grid we've had. It's amazing how much the back of the field is now having to absolutely fly to catch up with the front, as they're all starting to stack up now. Obviously, it's going to be a massively long grid. Well, there's still going to be people actually on the turn when the lights go green. So I'm keeping a little eye on the mid-pack, sort of on my off-stream camera, try and keep a little eye on what's going on in case anything does happen. But as we normally say, our Tier 2 guys are pretty clean, but I imagine, John, you're going to be keeping an eye on the very front of the grid, so I'll let you call this bit.
Yeah, we will get underway then for 60 minutes of action here at Silverstone for round number 1 here in Tier 2 of the AOR GT3 series. Louis Vabeling is going to lead them away, waiting for green lights to go then. Nicholas Hurt on the front row. Patience for the drivers, not the power. They go then towards Copse Corner for the very first time as they all fly towards there. Bubbling still leading towards turn 1. Richie Cornercrack side by side on the entry there, but it's still the 991 car that leads, all in hot pursuit as they barrel on down to Maggots and Beckett. See Neuwirth and one of the Ferraris going side by side. I think that's Giacomelli on the run towards Maggots and Beckett's there, but I think for the most part they've all managed to get through there pretty cleanly so far as they barrel their way onto the back straight for the first time. And I think, oh dear, further down the order, of course, called it too soon. See, Bart Raven has been flying down the order in all of that. More cars bundling their way together, almost 5 wide on the back straight there. Further carnage down the order, a couple of drive-through penalties, big crashes through the field, and I have absolutely horribly, commentator cursed this one, several accidents for our drivers further down in the mid-pack. Action still going on further ahead, but not the start that several of these drivers would have wanted in the opening round of this season.
No, definitely not. I mean, a lot going on there. Very hard to keep an eye on everything in the background. I think there's probably going to be some post-race investigation. I definitely saw a very questionable rejoin that may have then caused that accident on that back straight. So a couple of guys going very slowly there. Car number 51. That's Bart Raven. It looks like a very, very heavily damaged BMW. I think he's actually pulling to the side, probably going to return to the pits. Not the beginning he would have wanted. Yes,
gone straight. We've got a yellow flag out in the middle sector as well. I think for Kieran Patton. Oh dear! There's some other bumping around going on there. That's Ermakov and Jimmy Holm. They're all getting involved in this one as well. That is through Village Corner. And yeah, drivers seem to be a little bit on the eager side. Oh, I have to check on the lead battle though. Nicholas Hurt down the inside of bumbling in towards the penultimate corner. Then side by side on the exit, Luffield, number 14 car, trying to get the power down in that Porsche. But this is for the lead then, Visceral Esports versus that 901 car around the outside through Woodcut, then side by side on the run towards Cops Corner on only the second lap. But Louis Bubbling, sensible perhaps after all the catastrophes we've seen so far in the grid, and is going to allow that one to go. But he's got to be careful because Richie already side by side on the run up towards Maggotts and Beckett's now.
Oh goodness gracious, that's a big move.
Dear.
Oh, I'm not sure if there was there contact there.
I think there was. Richie. I think Richie. I'm not sure if he did back out the throttle there to let Bubbling by, but one way or another, the 901 car has rejoined back in front. Oh my goodness, I'm seeing some 3 wide moments, I think, slightly further down. There's another yellow flag out on the run towards Maggotts and Beckett to the 1-2-3 cars. Kieran Patterson again. Stowe Corner saw Jacques Amelli, and I think it's Hugo Bourchet side by side. Contact again, Ferrari shoved out wide, and then he's got Nigel Tarrant in the Porsche trying to get involved in this as well. Honda just behind, all jostling position. Big dive on the brakes from one of the Ferraris into the club chicane then, and it's all absolute chaos in the mid-pack for some of these positions just outside the top 10. That's Alessio Mellis that's now being hung out for dry, overtaken by the 42 car, and these tier 2 guys absolutely going at it hammer and tong in the opening couple of laps of this race then.
Yeah, I say always race 1 is always a little bit different to the rest of the season. It's always a little bit more, let's say, manic. New guys. Oh, car number 69 taking a big shunt from car number 144 there. So that was
Sacchetti in the Mercedes.
Yeah, just went into the back of that Honda, which is Florence. Bit of a tap. I don't think any positions were lost, luckily. Very lucky to get away with that, but a lot of cars in the pit for repairs there. Car number 117 just leaving car 11. Car number 51, 910 and 29 all in the pits. Obviously there is one mandatory stop, and they could have...
Sorry, there's a yellow flag out for someone. That is down at Brooklands there. That's number 26 car, I think, that's gone around. That was the Audi of Rabaud, and who was that alongside him? I can't quite see them on camera shots. Doesn't look like was one of the Aston Martin's split liveried car there on that, but not the biggest amount of harm that we've seen so far, but a lot of contact in these opening couple of laps.
Oh, I just noticed a car number 51, Raven, still in the pit, so obviously had a lot of damage, or whether or not he's sort of having a bit of a personal breathe moment and just needs to calm his mind a little bit after that lap 1 incident. Very, very unlucky. And it was just a case of bunching. There were so many cars there just as coming out of Maggotts and Beckett, so just, they never really had anywhere to go, and it was just a case of everyone a bit too eager, I think. Race 1, so the red mist descends, no one wants to give an inch, but sadly, 5 into 1 doesn't go, and sometimes you need to leave a bit of room. And actually, car number 910 is at risk of being caught by the leaders now, obviously coming out of the pit. So, he's ahead of everyone at the moment, but there is quite the possibility he is going to get caught, just simply because his tyres will be colder. even if he has changed tyres, they won't be up to temperature yet, whereas a couple of these guys now have got a few laps under their belt, and especially these Porsches, they are absolutely flying. Jay Fang doing really well to hang on to the back of them, running in 5th, obviously, himself, but just hanging on to the back of them is quite the effort, it would seem, at the moment. Everyone else has been pushed aside and given up the ghost, as all the Porsches take over pretty much nearly the entire top 6.
Yeah, these Porsches looking mighty quick today. Fastest lap for number 83 car right now. It's Lloyd Rainier still down in 6th place, and he's trying to catch up to this battle, though I think we might see some changes for fastest lap. 58.5 for Nicholas Hurt, 58.4 for Jay Fang. So that BMW maybe the first of the non-Porsches, but still having some good pace in that car, and he is extracting some pretty speedy lap times, at least in this early phase of the race. And I'm not sure whether or not Corner Crack may be able to have a go at Richie down the back of this next stretch, because Richie hasn't got such a good slipstream towards Louis Vubbling, who has started to drop away somewhat to our current race leader now of Nicholas Hurt. And that 420 car is too far away, so these guys all still absolute nip and tuck in these top 5 positions. Someone that was going to try and make a move, Hugo Bochet around the outside of Daniel Brewer. That's not going to work, though. Daniel Brewer shuts the door on the exit. We saw these two going side by side on the previous lap as well. Dive towards the inside of the club chicane. Oh, that was mighty close on the entry to the apex there, but the 518 car just about managing to keep out the rear bumper of Brewer, but he has now lost some time. He's got to be careful not to fall into the clutches of the Ferrari of Giacomelli behind, who has got some pretty close company in the form of Janis Reinders in the Honda. So they will blast their way through Abbey Curve. So a lot of very tight battles going on in the opening phase of this race, as our leaders very close through that middle part of the lap. Seem that some of them more comfortable around certain parts of the circuit. Seminara and Grabowski side by side on the exit of the loop there. The Honda trying to use its extra power and acceleration. The 41 car around the outside through Aintree gets the power down, and that BMW, I think, is just going to be absolutely left for dead on that Wellington straight there, and they'll have to try for a move somewhere else on the circuit, but really showcasing the differences in performance between these different cars at different places on the circuit.
Yeah, and I mean, there was a time, remember, when the Porsche was the one that was slow in a straight line. Oh, move for 27th place there, just got done. Car number 30, Rattiani, just done a move on Pazgas in the 95, what is it? Lamborghini, that's the word. God, it's been a little while since I've had to call out people's names and things. I'm a little bit rusty, I do apologise to everyone at home. But car number 9 of Alex Fender looks to be sort of leading of this rear pack of drivers.
Oh, we've got yellow flag out, sorry, for somebody. The number 21 car, that's Santama, was gone off at Copse Corner. Oh dear, I didn't quite catch that. He was just recovering from the gravel trap. I didn't see how that started off. I thought I heard some gravel in the background when I was looking at some other drivers through turn 1, but that car now barely hanging on to the top 30, down 28th place. Yellow flag for Giacomelli. The end of the back straight. There's contact with the Honda that he was battling with, slight amount of contact. Oh, and the Porsche of Nigel Tarrant also getting collected in that as well, and will have taken a bit of damage in all of that. Giacomelli immediately back in response, so being left out on the outside, though, from the 36 car, losing another position to the Mercedes as well. Now it's Matt York tagged onto that train as they all battle tooth and nail, but the Italian not having a good lap.
No, not at all. I say a Matt York, very clean, very fair racer, but very fast as well, and he will not miss an opportunity to go for an overtake. If he sees an ounce of weakness, he will pounce. Quick one on the which is the Porsche that we just saw go off a moment ago. Just slightly unsettled the car going into turn 1, and he tried to hold the slide, wasn't enough. Snap over understeer, sorry, and he just went off into the gravel. Did manage to keep it out the wall, so apart from maybe some slightly flat spotted tyres, I think he got away with that quite luckily, to be honest.
That is good to hear. Something that is less good to hear, unfortunately, Vince van Meerveld in the chat, I think indicating that he is out of this race, and I imagine he may have been involved in that rather messy start, unfortunately, at the beginning of this race, And yes, unfortunately for Van Meerveld, has already had his race come to an end. So hopefully better luck for Vince next time around. But it was a series of major incidents for certain drivers. Meanwhile, looking back at the front of the pack, Jay Fang now in that BMW starting to come alive. Potentially looking to go around the outside of corner crack in towards Stoke Corner. Got to be brave around there. We saw contact with Giacomelli and Reynolds earlier, but the BMW trying to keep his foot planted to the floor. Lloyd Rainier lurking in the background of all of this. Well, corner crack mid track defence there on the entry towards the club chicane and stops the BMW being able to do anything. And this is part of the lap where the Porsche will be very quick. Good acceleration, good brakes, and that's where the BMW could lose out. But it seems in that beginning part of the lap, Jay Fang, the BMW, with that extra straight line speed that he's got, is able to get himself in a good position towards Stoke Corner, maybe even on the run up towards Village if he can have a bit of a dive at it. But I think he's too far away and have to wait for another opportunity. But that BMW starting to maybe become a bit more competitive as the tyres on those Porsches around him, and there's quite a few of them, start to wear down.
Another BMW battle. Oh, there's a yellow flag just come out.
Oh dear.
42.
Yeah, I see Florence and Taryn involved in that as well. Oh dear. Oh, I thought there was going to be some contact for Matt York as well. Let's try and see if we can scroll back and just capture what happened there. So I think Taryn is going to come across this incident. I did see him dropping down the order of a 912 car in towards Village. Going, oh dear! Oh, he's completely missed his braking point on the entry there. And unfortunately, the 42 car in the Honda, just nothing. That's Max Florence that was just collected, sent around. And that is, unfortunately, I think, a big misjudgment on the part of 912, and almost collecting, I think, his teammate in the 911 car shortly after, and comes into the pits, and slides into the wall on the pit entry. So very much not the lap that he would have wanted in all of that. Yes, unfortunately, some more incidents for some of our drivers further down the field then.
Really good show of correct crash etiquette there, though. You see, held the brakes across the circuit in a nasty position right on the exit of a corner. He was just off the racing line. Very tempting to possibly try and reverse back, but if he had, he would have caused another incident. We saw Matt York there having to go evasive as he was on the outside of that turn. But with a stationary car, even if it's in a bad spot on track, it's better to stay still until there's no traffic around you, then do the manoeuvre. And that is exactly the right thing to do. It's very hard to sit there and have to wait. There's nothing more frustrating than losing position, so you're desperately trying to snatch at gears and get the car moving, but you just have to hold the brakes, and that was textbook driver quality there. Just, sort of keeping his cool, just waiting it out, especially after he was, obviously hit by the 912. It could have been very easy to get frustrated and just try and pull away as quickly as possible, but that is exactly the kind of driving that we want to see here. Spot on bit of car control there, just to sit and wait rather than just go for a silly move to try and get back on track. I'm having a quick look at these top three. They are unbelievably close still. These three actually really starting to break away now from fourth place as well.
Sorry, we've got a yellow flag out for Neuwirth. I think he's disconnected. Yeah, I seem to have a face full of one of the tents off the circuit. So I think, unfortunately, Neuwirth, I believe, is disconnected. He was running in 8th place. It's a disaster for the Aston Martin.
Yeah, 63, 41 and 9 are appearing in very odd positions.
So they are.
So I know there were some issues last night with server attacks. So hopefully that's not what we're seeing now. Fingers crossed. We shan't say any more than that. We'll just say fingers crossed. Yeah, because Alex Fender, he apparently is he is showing on my screen as a man waving a flag. So I doubt that's him. I can't actually find the other guys. So yeah, a couple of people completely missing at the moment, which is a real shame. Especially obviously the opening race of the season, everyone very keen to show what they can do. So to be disconnected is a bit of a disappointment. But as we always say, it's very similar to having a mechanical failure. Oh, Carnival 6 has got a yellow flag as well now. That's Giacomelli. He's sideways. So
oh dear, so he is.
I'm just going to go back and see. I can see what happens.
Yeah,
so...
I've just pulled it up on the replay here. It looks like he's putting pressure onto the BMW ahead. Side by side, late move towards the inside at Maggers and Beckett's, then around the outside. Oh, and he's just completely lost the back end. And Matt York, amazing reactions there. Got on the brake mid corner there, a very fast section off the circuit, and managing to stop for any further contact with that number 6 car, Giacomelli. Yeah, having a torrid time in this race, but unfortunately that one he did all by himself, but maybe a little bit of a result of some damage from early on, I'm not sure. Just checking in on our leaders though, Richie has closed right up to the back now of Vubbling, who has to go all the way to the left-hand side as they weave left from right, try to break the toe. Richie trying to look for a move up towards the inside, in towards Brooklands, never can't quite make it stick. And Vubbling will hold on to that position for another lap. I'm also seeing, am I seeing the 63 car pulled over? I think actually that might have been one that was already off circuit early on. So it does look like, unfortunately, that a few of our drivers have had some connection issues over the last couple of laps. Also, just to answer a question in the chat, yes, so there will be penalties applied after the race for any stewards inquiries that are opened up. Tier 1 has live stewarding, but these guys can report any instance that they feel that they need to submit appeals to, and then post-race penalties can be handed out afterwards to adjust accordingly. But
yeah, no live stewarding for there's live stewarding for Tier 1 as only Tier 1 race on Mondays, and then on Tuesdays, Tiers 2 all the way to 10 race all at the same time. So there just isn't enough people to cover all of those with live stewarding. So as John said, basically, if you have an incident, you put in a ticket and say, I had an incident, you put in all your information, when it happened, all the videos, all the different angles, and then you can go from there. Yeah, and penalties are applied to the next race, and obviously, as we've seen actually, if you finish a season with a load of license points, even if you then decide, oh well, I'm not going to come back for a couple of seasons, and you then show up 2 seasons later, you will still carry the penalties until you have raced to clear them. So even if, I think it was someone that last was with us in season 8, they joined back up again. I can't remember if they were Tier 2 or Tier 9, it was one of them. But yeah, essentially, until they've raced, they will still keep carrying their penalties. And the idea is to try and stop people from coming back after a couple of years and just being like, oh, clean slate. It's not that way. If you want to clear your slate, you've got to actually physically clear the slate on the track. You can't just give it time, which I think is quite good. It does stop people just, you know, chopping and changing between different servers. Obviously, there's lots of people that put together different types of racing. Apex Online Racing is not the only community. There are a few others. It just stops people bouncing around and getting away with bad behaviour over a long time. It is quite a clever way of doing it, I think. It's good to see that there's not just the penalties in-game, but there's the licence points that are held together by Apex Online Racing to ensure you don't get bad racing etiquette.
Yeah, without doubt, that's a really important aspect in all of this. Of course, in AOR, we want friendly racing on track. You can race hard, you can really push yourself to the limits, which these Tier 2 guys and Tier 1, of course, everybody within the league certainly does, but all within racing fairness, and that is what we try to put across to our drivers. Just approaching... Go ahead.
Oh, they're at the inside. I move a 7th here. This is Boucher versus Brewer. They're side by side. Are they going to be able to hold it together coming down towards the chicane? They're absolutely neck and neck. I think Boucher is going to have the inside, though. Oh, I've got my numbers mixed up.
That's Brewer that's ahead in that. Although someone, just further up. Oh, it's all kicking off. We've now got Richie and Vubbling side by side on the run up towards Abbey Curve. And Richie has made the move up into P2. So the bright pink Porsche finally manages to get his way through. Vubbling, I don't think, is going to be able to respond, although he's very late on the brakes. Trying to go around the outside at Village Corner. I'm sure that Richie will be wise to the dive on the second part. That's allowed Corner Crack to get involved in all of this one as well. And now all of of a sudden we have a bit of a three-way tussle for these podium spots. I think Brewer has maintained that position over the other BMW of Hugo Boschert, but I don't know, is Vubling going to be able to do anything? He's looking towards that inside line on the run towards Brooklands. Richie gives him room, corner crack there as well, trying to carry the speed on the outside, gets kick of oversteer though, so that takes him out of this fight. And I think in the end, unless Vubling gets an absolutely mighty exit, it's a pretty good one at that. He's almost pushing along. He is pushing Richie along. He's almost desperately trying to get a nose on the inside towards Cops Corner. Richie not allowing him to. And I think in the end, Vubling is going to have to back out that one. And Richie, after fighting hard for almost half a lap, does eventually take the position into P2. Meanwhile, Corner Crack has decided to bail out of this one, go into the pits and try to go for the undercut at this 20-minute stage. So my goodness, what a bit of side-by-side action we had there between a few cars.
It's all gone a little bit mad, hasn't it, just recently? I'm having a quick look in the YouTube chat, coming up with Alexa coming in and saying that he's in a voice chat actually with car number 9, and he's saying that it isn't showing that he's disconnected from the server on their end, but he can't see any other track cars on track, and same with the car number 41. So those cars, car number 9 and 41, that as far as I can see, are off track and just stationary floating, which looks how it normally would if there was a disconnect. They are apparently still there on track, but I can't see their positions in the race. So yes, as someone's just said, they're in the matrix now, quite possibly. So a bit of an odd one. Might have to wait for the end results to actually see what happens there. But I would imagine, yeah, again, it's just come up. Car number 9 is driving around by himself, hasn't got anyone to race against. But on my screen is completely motionless. So I'm not sure how he looks on yours, but as far as I can tell, that would normally be the sign of a disconnect.
Yeah, I mean, when if I try to go to the number 9 car, I start merging into the shadow realm through the floor. And I think same can be said for the number 41 of Grabowski. Whether, yeah, the game doesn't quite know what to do about that on the exit of Maggots and Beckett's there. So, yeah, very confusing state of affairs that we've got at the moment. Also, in a little bit of a curious turn, I think Simone Seminara, who is the first of our stoppers, has done the fastest lap of the race on a 58.255. Currently down in 20th place. We'll have to see how far Simone can work their way up the order on the back of this quite substantial undercut.
So
yes.
one of our sort of top 5 guys into the pits. So that's quite early in the race. Still with 37 minutes to go.
Yeah, plenty of time for strategy to still play into this one.
I say someone that's really made quite a decent run for himself now is Nicholas Hurt. Really good run, 1.25 seconds ahead. So he's really starting to stretch his legs, and obviously really took advantage of Richie and Vubling having that battle. He's, sort of really started to pull away, and that's quite a nice, comfortable lead he's got himself there. Plenty of room to breathe, that's for certain. And I imagine Richie is trying to do the same now and trying to pull away and see if he can catch up. But looking at their times, pretty similar. I mean, he was significantly... Actually, Richie was quicker than... Pretty much... quicker than Hurt and Vubling last lap. So he's definitely moving in the right direction that he wants to be. He's definitely able to push forward slowly. And there you go. Jay Fang has re-emerged in 15th place at the moment. So hopefully not going to be too tied up in traffic. Trying to see where he is. Let's see how busy everything is around him. All on his own. So that is perfect pit leaving conditions. He's got no one in front of him, no one behind him. He can just put in some times, just get those tyres up to temperature without having to be overpressured, not worrying about getting clipped by someone while he's on a slightly slower outlap. This is exactly what he wants, and this might be a make or break moment for him. If he's pitted correctly, this could gain him position, because those 3 Porsches at the front still definitely within squabbling distance.
And Richie, Nicholas Hurt and Lois Rainier all coming into the pits now. So that'll be very interesting to see where they all emerge after all that, because yeah, absolutely, that undercut. Oh, we're just seeing Nigel Tarrant capitalising immediately on a mistake from Podens in that Honda, went deep at the end of the hangar straight there to... and then went wide. Porsche snuck his way through and in 23rd position. But yeah, Jay Fang, I have to see how he does on that undercut. And also, Vubling how he does on this overcut strategy and how much he pushes that overcut as well. We'll catch up with Jay Fang and see. So he's just coming down the Wellington Straight at the moment in towards Brooklands Corner. Meanwhile, our race leader, Nicholas Hurt, I think, is already on the move again after his pit stop and heading to the end. Jay Fang now just exiting the final corner. I'll tell you what, it's I think it's going to be certainly closer than it was previously. Nicholas Hurt just gets onto the power now, so out of the pits he comes. Richie in the background as well. There's Jay Fang in all of this, and he's overtaken 2 of the Porsches and all of that, and into P2 Jay Fang goes. So a beautiful undercut from him.
And he's going to have the opportunity to keep pushing forward as well. He's got a lap on those tyres, and you can see he's really gaining now on the back of that Porsche in front of him as well. I've just seen, sadly, that Corner Crack has actually been disconnected as well. So a lot of disconnects this evening. Bit of a shame to see.
Yeah, that is very unfortunate, and Corner Crack obviously was very much in the mix for that battle in front of the fit. Oh dear, I just saw someone floating on the entry towards Stowe Corner. I think they seem to come back to normal existence. I hope so. But Jay Fang now absolutely putting some pressure on to Nicholas Hurt in that lead Porsche. I imagine once those tyres fire up on the Porsche, that Nicholas will be able to respond a bit more to the pace of Jay Fang. But we did seem to get the impression that the BMW was able to hold on to its tyres a bit longer, be a bit more consistent during the stint. And the problem is for Nicholas Hurt is that BMW, in relative terms, is very quick in a straight line. So if he is able to lock on to the toe of our effective race leader at the moment and make his way by, it's going to be very tricky for Nicholas Hurt or any of the other Porsches to respond and come back and do the same. Oh dear, I think that was the car that I saw earlier. Hugo Boucher has phased through the floor on the entry towards, or on the exit of Village Corner there. So unfortunately for the 518 car that was having a tremendous battle with Daniel Brewer, has also, I believe, had some sort of form of connection issues in the server, which is a great shame.
Yeah, as we say, it's always very hard, and as we normally say, we kind of put disconnects down to being equal to having an engine failure or some large mechanical failure that's outside of the driver's sort of control. It is sadly one of those things that it kind of seems to come in waves, doesn't it? You sometimes have races where there's absolutely no disconnects whatsoever, and then suddenly you'll have a race and there'll be a whole load of them. Again, I'm not actually seeing anyone's ping levels. Normally I get ping levels all up the left-hand side of my monitor, but I'm not seeing any. It's just showing them all as nothing. So I'm not sure why that's like that, but there we go. That is like that now. So it might be different for you, John. You may be able to see ping levels, because normally you think
in the... I can't remember, I could be wrong. I think in the broadcasting layout of the in-game graphics, I'm not sure if we get those piece of information. If I'm totally honest, it's something that we've haven't had to deal with too often, so I haven't made too much observation about it. Just one thing to note, Simone Samonera, who made a very early pit stop, I think has got an undercut very nicely done on Daniel Brewer, who has gone from battling with one BMW behind him in the form of Hugo Boucher, who's unfortunately, like I say, had that disconnect, now has the number 12 car in front, but will of course be on much fresher tyres, so may be able to respond in due course. But Samonera making that undercut strategy work very nicely for themselves in that number 12 car.
As a quick one, I cycled through and now I have all my ping appearing, which is good. Everyone has very low ping. I just cycled through all the way back through to the broadcast area again, as you do, just to quickly see what's going on. Nicholas Hurt and Jay Fang having a lovely little squabble there right at the front of the grid, aren't they? It's nice to see that the BMW hasn't completely dropped off the back of that Porsche, but I do think he may have missed his opportunity without a mistake from Hurt to catch him.
Although 57.8 last time around for Jay Fang, that was actually 0.2 faster. And through Copse Corner, look at the momentum. Jay Fang, so out of out of nowhere, that gap was a second when they were at Luffield Corner, and Jay Fang now all over the gearbox, almost pushing Nicholas Hurt round through Maggotts and Beckett. And I tell you what, the straight line speed advantage of this BMW is very strong. Go on board the front splitter of this car, and I think this could be very much a move for the race lead. Nicholas Hurt holding that inside line on the run towards Stowe Corner, then side by side drag race with the BMW on the outside, then try and sweep around the outside. Hurt though holding on strong on that inside line, and Jay Fang unable to do anything for the time being. And this next part of the circuit is where the Porsche is going to be quick, so I think that gap will open up again. But Jay Fang definitely right in the midst of this right now.
I reckon he might have been listening then when I said I think he's missed his chance, and he obviously sort of puffed his chest out and thought, I'll show you, mister. That was insanely good driving through Maggotts and Beckett's there. You actually saw he went off of his standard line to try and get a slightly faster exit, as opposed to being just as quick through the corners. Going to be nigh on impossible to overtake through Maggotts and Beckett's unless you're really brave and get a good overlap. Oh, kind of a 69 had a yellow flag there at one point. I think it's off the
dear. Yeah, that is Stowe Corner.
So it is moving, but off the track for a little while.
Yeah, that was Christos Podens. I've just scrolled back on the replay. So he had the Audi locked onto his gearbox on the run down. I've got a horrible feeling there could be some contact here on the entry. We've got the farthest camera shot of all time. Oh, that was very unfortunate. They were side by side right on the apex, and a slight miscommunication, I'm thinking, lines in the mid-corner phase through Stowe, and unfortunately those two have come together in the process. Also notably in the meantime, Huna Hawkey and one of the Porsches, three-way fight on the run-up towards Abbey Curve there. Big moment for number 43 Mercedes, just about holding on to all of that. I'm trying to track down our other drivers. That was Dan Schmidt and Kevin Niles that have now taken both those positions away from the Mercedes, and I have a feeling that Aston Martin may be about to put some pressure.
Vubbling, stop go 30.
Oh dear! Oh, so that must be for speeding in the pit lane then. As that is disaster for Vubbling, and Kevin Niles, I think I've just clicked on the wrong car. That's not what I wanted. Kevin Niles down the inside towards Brooklands then, and I think he's going to take the move. Oh, Dan Schmidt though forces the issue on the inside again in towards Luffield Corner. This fight in full form now, and I think Dan Schmidt might have got the move done for the time being, but Kevin Niles immediately on the response again. Faster straight line speed in the Aston Martin, always being forced towards the left hand side of the circuit there. Schmidt holding the inside line towards Copse Corner, and at least for the time being the 444 car won't be able to do anything, but I think might have another run on the next part of the circuit.
They're in more trouble. They've got a Mercedes coming up. Actually had to go quite evasive to avoid hitting the back of the
27 car went deep there in Maggotts there, and Kevin Niles immediately took the position away and got switched back in a very unconventional part of the circuit there, but he has taken the position. I think Schmidt will have enough space over Hawkey, if I'm not mistaken. Mercedes too far back, but yeah, we'll sort of recuperate on that rather significant as all got slightly glazed over for a moment about Vubbling. Yeah, stop and go 30-second penalty for the man that started on pole position, was then in P2, has been thoroughly undercut by a lot of the drivers that he was battling with, and yeah, that is absolutely cataclysmic, and he's just coming in to serve that now. So big disaster for 991 car.
Yeah, to be honest, that's the worst thing you can get is the stop go 30. It's a real killer. It's obviously all that time slow in the pit lane, plus the 30 seconds of sat there letting your tyres go cold. Just while everything was going on that last little battle, change of position for 32nd place, Russo versus Hoshi, which is Honda versus Aston Martin, and a lovely liveried car number 25 of Russo. That's a stunning livery on that car number 25. I know it's obviously a little way down the grid, but he just had a lovely overtake actually on the number 11 Honda. But I think that this might be my livery of the day. And are we doing Tim's top pick this season?
We will have to, and I will have a look at that car in a moment. I'm afraid Jay Fang and Nicholas Hurt side by side once more, and we'll run towards Club Chicane. I think Richie... Oh, I thought he was going to have a sneak up the inside there through on the exit of Club there. He might have a good enough run, does he, towards Abbey Curve. Jay Fang, he seems very slow on part of the lap, but he's an absolute monster in the first sector. And again, these two... these three, excuse me, absolutely nip and tuck. Richie forces the issue down the inside, late braking, but the BMW, great driving from Jay Fang, hangs it around the outside there. He's not letting this one go. Nicholas Hurt will breathe a sigh of relief in all of this. That allows him to open up a bit of a gap, and Jay Fang now has to try to just hold on to P2 for the time being. But yeah, that was a right old squabble at the front. I think that will be safe to look away from for now. And yeah, so the 25 car was it that we were having a mention of?
Yeah, car number 25. I think that's probably going to get my livery of the day. It's
that is a snazzy livery. I do agree.
Very nice. Another split livery, isn't it? Very popular this season. It's the split liveries.
Yeah, very nice for the 25 car. It's yeah, understated on one side, quite simplistic detail, and then quite a vast change of difference on the other side. But yeah, very nicely put together that car. A lot of these drivers often end up having quite a bit of input into their own liveries. I think in terms of our front runners, Nicholas Hurt's safe for this lap around for any sort of form of attack from Jay Fang. Richie right on the gearbox, almost pushing Fang along on the exit. Mackers and Beckett's, but BMW has enough straight line speed to stop any challenge from the Porsche for now. And I think our next sort of closest battle, we've got a little bit of a trio for the squabble from 13th to 15th between the likes of, actual fact, excuse me, we've got a bit juggled around which cars that is. That is, because I think my leaderboard having a bit of an issue with some of those disconnected cars. We've got Jean-Sebastian Casangina, and then we've got Alejandro Avila that's coming under pressure from Rahevsky in the BMW, is looking towards the outside. We saw Jay Fang tries a few times. Not sure if 96 will have any more luck. He's got very much alongside mid-corner, though. If he can pull this one off, it'd be amazing. He has gone a bit off track. I'm sure the Mercedes might have something to say about that, but the 96 car, brave as you like, around the outside, and in one form or another, goes up into 13th place there, ahead of the Mercedes, but a poor line.
Surely not, no. Maybe the Mercedes might have the legs. Is he going to try and go to the inside here? It's going to be very brave. The BMW staying to the right on the brakes. What's going to happen? No, has to give it up and lets the BMW go ahead. He's actually now going to be slightly under pressure. That Porsche, I think of, is it it's Santima. Oh, actually two of the Porsches squabbling there. So Taran and Santima, this is a real nice little battle pack, this. Every time someone breaks away, suddenly someone else catches up. So it's quite a nice little pack here down in this battle for 12th position.
Oh, for a second I thought that was my leaderboard. Again, being a bit on the presumptuous side, we've got very close margins between Jay Fang and Richie again. Very similar times for all of our top three, and Jay Fang now just seems to have gone into defense mode. He had good pace in the opening couple of laps, but Nicholas Hurt now has been able to extend that gap after they broke away from our current race leader, and reaching out, putting again all sorts of pressure on to Jay Fang. But even with that much slipstream, he's only a couple of meters away from the BMW, but just again does not have the pace, and the BMW holding on to P2 for the time being. And yeah, just checking in also on that squabble that we're looking at not too long ago. I think Rahevsky might be in a position to make a move on this back straight on the Porsche in front, because we know the straight on speed of that BMW, and the Porsche I think is going to struggle to defend here.
A little bit further down the grid as well, two Hondas battling out, car number 117 and the 777 of Ermakov and Holm. Those two were very, very close. Just coming down through Max.
Oh, yellow flag for someone. That was the 991 car.
That's lovely. I will go back and watch what happened there.
Yep, in the meantime, we've got the Mercedes trying to go all the way around the outside. That was almost major contact there. That was between the 911 and the 23. That's Casangina and Avila in all of that, with this mid-pack squabble that we've got kicking off. And yeah, I think unfortunately Vubbling maybe he's decided to call it a day after that stop and go 30-second penalty.
Yeah, it looked like he just got unsettled into turn one by the looks of it. He went in, slight bit of oversteer, managed to catch it, but then just ended up going off. Oh, Smith down in 30th place, has got a drive through. Yeah, it looked like he just sort of decided to go with the option of, you know, just decided to pull to the side and give it a rest, I think. It was a bit of a shame. Good to see people retiring out. Obviously, disconnects happen, and obviously, sometimes understandable if you have a huge crash. If you've got 5 minutes worth of damage, some people you do understand they end up sitting in the pits or retiring. But yeah, a bit of a shame to see someone retiring just because of that. They were having a good race up to that point. Just having a quick look in the chat, just seeing it. I think it's I'll just go with whacked out. I don't know the rest of it. How do you qualify for Tier 2 Apex Online Racing? Is it invitational only? No, it is not invitational at all. If you go to the description below this video, you will see a link to Apex Online Racing. They have a website and they have a Discord as well. All the links available there. Basically, you have to, before the season starts, you have to do the hot stints, which is basically flying laps of certain circuits. It's different every season. You go there and you put in your best times you possibly can. Then there are evaluation races as well. You can take a part in at least one. You can do multiple, and that will assess your your driver skill and your racecraft, as well as just your pace. And then basically with all that information and any previous racing you've done with AOR, they'll look at all that data and kind of put it together and put you in the right kind of place. So no, it's not invitational at all. It's all down to the drivers themselves and the performances they can put out. So yeah, there's no big egos, especially here in Tier 2. No sort of, people just pushing their way in. It is all down to how you perform on the circuit. So yeah, but I say sign up. I think they do allow Sorry, you go for it.
So speaking of which and how you perform on the circuit, Richie forcing the issue down the inside of Luffield Corner. He's been trying to find a way through on Jay Fang for the last couple of laps, and now side by side towards Cops Corner. Brave through there. Jay Fang trying to hold on the outside. Tiny bit of contact. They're still side by side though. Great racing between these two. Nicholas Hurt is absolutely loving this, allowing him to escape. I think Jay Fang's still going to hold on. So Richie, after all of that, still unable to make his way past the BMW. Jay Fang doing a stellar job there to hold on to P2. My goodness, what a scrap these two are having for the podium positions.
I think we saw it earlier on as well, wasn't it? Richie had a tiny amount of contact with someone, and we did question, did he let off the throttle a little bit to give the position back? And I think that may have happened again there. Tiny little bit of contact, but he gave the position back just enough not to lose too much pace. The gap didn't open up too much. Just let him back in, and that should, in theory, mean that then Jay Fang post-race isn't going to go and report that incident, because he didn't really lose any time. No damage was done. The position was given back to him, and it goes a mile. If someone has a little nudge with you like that, and they don't just take advantage of it, it goes such a long way in respect from other racers. You think later in the season, if these two have a bump and it's the other way round, Jay Fang...
Sorry, that was really unfortunate timing, because there was a bump between Amelie and Cassangina on the run towards Stoke Corner, and yeah, there was well, I mean, they finished that incident in exactly the same order they were in, so I suppose there wouldn't be too much swap in position there, but yes, couldn't agree more. It does go very favourably in terms of the racing respect between the drivers, but also if you do come under review from stewards, the stewards will look favourably on any incident as well when the car has conceded the position after making contact. So yes, definitely a very high value principle here in the AOR community. Oh no! Oh, that is even worse! Richley has just pushed around Jay Fang on the exit of Luffield, and that's part of the circuit where he has been very, very quick. And Fang around now. Lois Rainier looking to go for P2 in all of this. That man started this race in P6. Jay Fang will be very unhappy about all of that. And yeah, Richie decided to then get on with his race from there, and I am sure that if Fang wishes to appeal that one, which I would imagine he would, that there may be a penalty coming the way of the 418 car. That's very unfortunate. I think there's a little bit of netcode and also just a little bit of desperation trying to find a way through on that very difficult to pass BMW, and now finds himself under pressure to drop back to P3, plus a penalty if Lois Rainier has anything to say about it towards Stoke Corner, but not yet for the time being. But yeah, it's just as when we were talking about racing respect and conceding positions, unfortunately, yeah, that great squabble that we had going on between two of our drivers in the top three coming to a rather unfortunate end.
Look who is back. In the back of that shot, Jay Fang did not drop very far away. For someone that went off on the inside of the turn and on grass, that BMW is still within the same shot as these guys. He is not that far behind. And if these two start squabbling, that BMW will be there and it will be hungrier than ever to take back those positions.
Yeah, speaking of someone that's looking pretty hungry at the moment, this scrap between Casancina and Avelay still going on. The 23 car bumping door to door on the run in towards the club chicane there. Mercedes ending up losing out and losing a chunk of time in all of that. I think Giacomelli also on his attempt to regain some time is trying to make his way past Petrus at the moment. We did also, when we were talking about some of the other happenings in this race, we saw Nigel Tarrant have a moment through Maggots and Beckett's and lost the back end of his car. It was very unfortunate, and he dropped down the order accordingly. And also in the chat, someone very wisely pointing out that Matt York has gained a tremendous amount of positions in this race, and in the one of the very few Audis on this grid, number 65 car in the top 10. And we saw this last season. He wasn't always the best in qualifying. He didn't often extract the most out of his car in that session. But he has gained 20 positions. So has Josh Waring in P8 for the number 34 car. So great stuff. Somebody is Barnabas Fazekas, who's right behind Matt York in all of this. He's gained 24 in the Lamborghini. So this just shows you what you can achieve if you keep your nose clean, put in good, consistent, clean laps. Of course, a little bit of luck with some of these positions as well, with some of those unfortunate disconnects. But, yeah, without doubt, some of our drivers... Oh dear, Matt York, as I've put the camera on him for the first time in a while, and he's made a mistake which may now give an opportunity to Fazekas, but I think he's a little bit too far away to do anything about that 10th place spot just yet. But yeah, some great moves up through the field. Oh, late dive from the Lamborghini almost into a Stowe corner. But yeah, great to see so many drivers managing to keep a cool head and really reaping the rewards in this opening round.
Someone that is doing really well, up to 15th place now, so I think they've made 15 places, is Peter, which is Hans Peter in the oh god, what is it? It's the Valentino Rossi liveried Audi. Really good race from him. He's kept his nose clean and he's up to 15th place and really charging. Now he's got past Santerma. He is absolutely flying away. So yeah, I think qualified in 30th place, but obviously his sort of his racecraft and how he feels on the track is pretty good. I don't think it would be that long until maybe he's starting to look at even further ahead.
Oh, and he may be gaining a position in a minute because Avelay sent it up the inside towards the loop, and those are the two cars battling right in front of Hans Peter. So yeah, he's kept his nose clean so far. White flag for a moment for Fazekas. I don't think that was anything too dramatic, but yeah, absolutely. Hans Peter could really benefit in that Valentino Rossi Audi, like you say. If that Mercedes and Porsche have been scrapping for quite a while now, if they do come together, that'll be another couple of positions for him. Oh, meanwhile, drag race between Fazekas and Matt York on the start-finish straight. That's going to be a side-by-side bit of action towards Cops Corner, and around the outside, the number 95 car goes, and into the top 10 for Fazekas. Matt York losing one of his positions that he's worked so hard for in this race. He'll still be happy, I think, with the overall net pace change, but Lamborghini running in the top 10 here at Silverstone. And for Fazekas then, what is that in total for him now? So that is, I think, once everything shuffles around, 25 positions gained for Fazekas. That is absolutely momentous and a great bit of driving from him in what has been just over 3/4 of this race.
Or just replied to someone in the chat. This I just very split upfield. But there is close battles throughout it, isn't it? And it's lovely to see. I'm just having a little look. Car number 96 might be trying to catch up the back of these two, Matt York and Fazekas. Or Fazekas? Sorry, I do apologise. It's always with race one. It's my brain just breaks when I'm looking at people's names. So I do apologise. But yeah, a couple of people asking about, is it too late to sign up for things? I think you can do mid-season sign-ups, but obviously you're not guaranteed a position on the grid. If you can be, essentially you'd almost run, I think you run as an amateur. It shows up as red to show that you're not a permanent sort of racer. You're just there to almost fill a position. But I mean, yeah, there usually is a spot on the grid. It's very, very rare that the grid is completely full. So there usually is a position. So if you do want to sign up later, you can absolutely go for it. And obviously, it will just be a case of seeing whereabouts you're placed. I've never signed up mid-season myself, though, so I'm not entirely sure how the placing works, because you couldn't take part in a evaluation race mid-season because they don't run any evaluation races. Or maybe you can use the Monday practice races for that. Not sure. That'd be something that definitely worthwhile joining the Discord and having a ask in the GT3 info section. Loads of information there. Lots of friendly people, always willing to point you in the exact right direction. As someone that hasn't actually raced with AOR, I would say it's definitely worth jumping in and having a chat in the GT3. Ooh! Car number 95 went very deep there and off the circuit. That was definitely going to be an off track for them, so hopefully he hasn't built up too many. He doesn't want to get a drive through, but with all of that, Matt York is now quite a way behind and looks to be under attack from car number 96.
Yeah, I was just looking back on the replay, see if we could capture that moment. I think I've chosen the correct car. Just having a look and seeing what happened. Yeah, had to bail out of that one, skipping across the grass, and yeah, taking that little bit of AstroTurf. It's quite helpfully placed on the exit of Chapel then in all of that, and it just makes that transition back onto the main part of the circuit a bit easier. Someone else that is on the move, Max Florence, closing up to the back of Josh Waring, who's very close up to the back of Simone Seminara, who was one of our first pitters, and I think is starting to suffer a little bit with regards to tyre wear. So that is a squabble that is starting to build up in these final 10 minutes of the race. We've also got Rahevsky putting pressure onto Matt York for the positions just outside of the top 10. Avalé still trying to get past Casangina in the 911 car, and Mercedes has been unable to do so. We've also got a bit of a three-way scrap going on. There's very nip and tuck towards Abbey now. We've got Huna Hawkey, Jimmy Holm, and Kevin Niles. Kevin Niles may be in a position to make a move, looking towards the outside on the run in towards Village Corner now, all the way around the outside in the Aston Martin. And the ex-Tier 1 driver showing exactly why he was in the top split for so many seasons. The 444 car beautifully gets the move done. He is going to have a bit of pressure put on him down this next stretch, though, because Jimmy Holm in that 777 Honda is very quick in a straight line all the way to the inside line. Is the Aston Martin towards Brooklands Curve now. The Honda tries to come back around the outside, but I think the experience in the cockpit of the 444 Aston is going to come out on top in all of that. But lovely move in the braking zone for the British driver then. That looked like some textbook trail braking all the way to the apex, wasn't it? Saw the Honda, got on the brakes, looked like it was going to be able to go around the outside, but it got all its braking done before it turned in, whereas the Aston just crept on the brakes, rolled it all the way to the apex, covered that line. There was no way of getting up the inside of him, and he just braked that little bit later due to that sort of like slightly more gradual later braking. Really good bit of driving there, and as you said, shows why that's the kind of place, the difference between Tier 1, Tier drivers. You might see a bit more of that. Just those slight little refinements in how they can drive. And to be fair, Kevin Na's doing a really good job here. Obviously all the way down in 27th at the moment, but looks to be climbing up the grid quite quickly. Yeah, I think actually maybe about to make a move, is he, onto, because this is a trio that is very close together. Huna Hawkey in that Mercedes, putting all sort of pressure onto Ermakov side by side on the run in towards the club chicane there, and the Aston, oh, Mercedes all the way around the outside, beautifully done for the 43, but here comes the 444 now. It's almost like watching Hamilton trying to go for the double on the exit of the club chicane, side by side on the exit. Mercedes gets the move done beautifully on the Honda there, will get ahead, and Kevin Niles will have to wait a little bit longer if he wants to make a move, but maybe not too long, because the Honda, big moment through Abbey, barely keeping it together there is the Honda of Ermakov, and now the Aston, it's a repeat move from last time, and almost down towards the inside of Ermakov is Jimmy Holm in that 777 Honda, and I think unfortunately 3 positions lost for Ermakov there in just as many corners, and great opportunistic driving both from Kevin Niles and Jimmy Holm there, but unfortunate stuff for the 117 car. Sorry,
I was having a quick look at the chat. That was some exquisite driving. Oh, car number 11 is showing as white and off track for me. Can I find car number 11?
Yes, and that looks disconnecty to me because either that or they're doing a four-wheel drive burnout in the sandpit.
Because they were having some pretty decent battles. I'd sort of seen that Honda sort of all over the place and in quite a few different battles. It was quite nice to see, but yeah, sadly, that does look like another disconnect. With only 6 minutes to go as well, that is a right kicker, that one.
Yep. Oh, and meanwhile, I think we've missed it. The Mercedes of Avellay has been desperately trying to make a move onto Casangina, flashing the lights, is the 911 car. Maybe not happy with how that one played out. We've seen these two scrapping very intensely over the last few laps. Mercedes has finally got ahead, but maybe in a fashion that the 911 car is not too happy about. Hans-Peter trying to push on behind. Almost a mirror image mistake of the Honda of the 117 last time around, but just about manages to keep it all together. And after such a great race, he will not want to throw it off the tarmac in these closing stages. But I think Avellay, now that he's got ahead, at least in terms of track position for how they'll cross the line, I think they will stay as they are at the moment. Actually, I just want to check something. Oh, Richie's off! Richie's off the circuit in P2! The man, I thought he was closing in on our race leader. He was pushing on very, very nicely. The 418 car was almost in a chance of taking the race victory on track because Nicholas Hurt was running very slowly and he was extremely close to the back of him. I'm not sure if Nicholas Hurt is running out of fuel or something, but there is extreme lack of pace for our race leader, and he's gone straight into the back of him in the middle of Magnussen Beckett.
So actually, yeah, it was just a case of that car was so much slower in front of him, and obviously I was going to say the BMW, not at all. The Porsche is so unstable through the turns if you have to make those micro adjustments, and that was a big adjustment he had to try and make there. Super shame. Just having a little look back on, obviously that was the Mercedes versus the Porsche, which was, who was that? That was Casangina, wasn't it? Versus Andrea Avellay's. And there wasn't actually any contact between them, so I don't know why the 911 was flashing quite so much. It was totally on his own. Again, Porsche got a little bit unstable mid-corner, and the Mercedes just sort of drove around the inside of him. There was miles between them. So whether or not maybe the 911 thought there was contact that unsettled the car, but there definitely wasn't. It was a completely legitimate move. So not sure why the flashing was there. Maybe just a desperate attempt to try and unsettle the Mercedes straight away and regain the position. Not sure. But yeah, looking back on the replay, there was definitely no contact at the time. I keep noticing on this part of the circuit that I keep seeing car number 41 is just upside down on my screen at the edge of the track. It looks like there's been a horrendous crash that the marshals just haven't bothered to attend. Not sure if it looks the same on yours, as is always the way with disconnects. It can look a bit squiffy. But now, the battle for first is absolutely on again, isn't it? Look at this.
Yeah, Nicholas Hurt had a bit of a wiggle there through Magnussen Beckett's as well, and Lois Brainey that started in P6. He was on provisional pole for a long portion of the session. He didn't manage to get that lap in at the end, but he's just been biding his time, and all the chaos that we have had in this race with 3 minutes to go. Nicholas Hurt, almost 2 minute dead lap last time around, really struggling, it seems, on pace at the end. And I think he's certainly on fresher tyres than some of our other drivers, so I'm really not sure, unless it's a bit of fuel saving at the very end if he's underfueled the car. But right now, Nicholas Hurt is absolutely in a very dire situation. Lois Rainier in that 83 has just a couple of laps if he wants to try to make a move to snatch victory at the very last second. I also get a feeling, by the way Nicholas is driving, maybe careful of track limits, but you can see he's struggling with understeer. Now the 83 launches an attack around the outside. I don't think he'll be able to do anything just yet, and surely can't get towards the inside of the loop. But this battle for the race lead is absolutely on right now.
Yeah, I think we're definitely going to see a change for position. I have got to quickly ask, are both these cars black for you?
They are, which I think means that either there's been a little bit of an issue in terms of the livery that they're driving with versus what we've been supplied, or they may not have actually sent in their liveries to the livery packers. The alternative explanation on that front, but no, I do have the same bit of viewing at this end.
Just making sure it wasn't a me problem. I just thought I'd double check. Someone that is probably rubbing their hands together in delight at seeing this is Jay Fang. Not only did the car that he had contact with now disappear. Oh, there's a mistake from Hurt. He's out wide. He hasn't completely lost the position. He's going to be on the outside, though, here. He's going to have to give a little bit of room.
Nicholas Hurt, big moment! And he's off the circuit!
I mean, fair play. That was a good save. Oh, nearly getting a collision there with the back marker, number 11 there. But I would imagine that actually even the back marker is probably outpacing Hurt at this point, and he'll be devastated. 59 minutes into the race, he loses 2 positions.
Jay Fang's in this as well. Jay Fang's in this as well, trying to go around the outside towards Stowe Corner. Nicholas Hurt, like I say, is going to be livid with that mistake. But Jay Fang now out of nowhere. Lois Rainier's taken the lead, but Fang on the final lap of this race is absolutely in with a shot of taking victory. There was contact between himself and Richie earlier. Richie's fallen down the order. Nicholas Hurt's made a mistake on the final lap of the race. Rainier hasn't led a single lap, and now he's under all sorts of pressure by the BMW on the final lap, and we've had a complete reshuffle with just about 30 seconds of this race left to go.
I mean, yeah, if you'd spoke to me earlier in the race and said car number 83, Rainier, is going to be leading on the final lap, I would have said maybe. But this has been such a turnaround from what was been such a strong effort at the beginning of the race. Again, it just shows how different setups maybe don't last quite so long. Has this Porsche been a slightly, of Rainier's Porsche, has it been a slightly more race comfortable setup? Because it doesn't seem to have been as slippery and slidey as some of the others. It's been much more stable. Again, final corner now, really, this final run. I don't think Fang's going to have anything in it, but second place, he'll be very pleased with that after the way his race has gone. But Rainier coming across the line now to win the opening round of Apex Online Racing's Season 12. Absolutely fantastic effort and a big weave to celebrate as well. And yeah, that was some fantastic stuff. And well done to Jay Fang as well from recovering from that spin earlier on to come home in second place. Great sort of driver skill to just read the situation and take advantage of it. But as we said, yeah, Hurt is probably hurting right now.
Yeah, Nicholas Hurt is going to be devastated with all of that. I think Josh Waring, he was close to the back of Seminar at the end, but didn't quite manage to make it. Same goes for Rahesky versus York. York hangs on to that position. I'm not sure if Rimbaud has just been sent down the order. Giacomelli and Petris very close together on circuit. I can't tell, though, if there was anything involving one of the other cars very close in towards that battle. My leaderboard doing a few funky things at this end. Giacomelli, though, after his rather busy race, crosses the line and finishes in 18th position. And I think the rest of our drivers are making their way towards the line that they will finish up as they are as it stands at the moment. But my goodness, what an end to that race. It looked like it was all said and done. I just saw on the timing sheet, so the gap at the front was coming down, and then Ridgely completely caught off guard by the lack of pace from Nicholas Hurt in that part of Magnussen Beckett, sent off the circuit, and then Nicholas Hurt, a couple of laps later, under pressure from Lois Rainier, almost making exactly the same mirror image mistake, manages to keep it together for third place, but he is going to be absolutely fuming with himself after that. He will be very gutted.
Yeah, I mean, it's just the way that racing is sometimes. So you run a setup that's really aggressive and really good for hot lapping and getting those lap times, but over the space of an hour, as the tyres, maybe the tyres start to wear out, or the fuel changes, especially in the Porsche, the balance of that car changes wildly over the space of a fuel tank, and obviously you're not allowed to refuel, which again might have been an issue for Hurt there as well. Did he run a bit low on fuel? Again, the car would have been really light on the front end, wouldn't have turned in like he wanted to, and he would have had to fuel save. So who knows? Hopefully some of our top guys are going to join us in the interview box. No one has joined quite yet. But what a fantastic race that ended up being. A bit messy at the beginning, but after the sort of the madness, it did seem to settle down. I'd love to know what happened with car 9 and 41. I think 9 in the end actually retired just because they were racing on their own on their screen, but car number 41 I'm still seeing as on circuit. And where is it showing it? I'm trying to see if it's showing it actually in the grid ordering. Car number 41 is showing up in 14th place on my screen.
I'm just trying to look for a moment. Not at my end. So I definitely some. Yes, there's definitely some weird shenanigans that unfortunately has gone on. I've got Grabowski has the on my sort of. Excuse me. Actually, on the leaderboard in game, 14th on my own stuff behind the scenes. I have him up in P1, which is I'm sort of maybe a small consolation prize for, unfortunately, for Grabowski's obviously rather disastrous race. But yeah, and I can still hear him revving in desperation underneath the circuit, unfortunately. But yeah, a big shame for the disasters of the connection issues for some of our guys this evening. Hopefully they will have better luck next time. But what an incredible race. And whilst we wait then for some potential interviews from our drivers, let's have a bit of a run through the final finishing order, or at least provisional, before any penalties, of course. And with the amount of incidents likely to be reported after this race, of course, some of this may change. But I think something that is very likely to remain as is Lois Rainier as your winner of the opening round here in Tier 2 for the AOR GT3 series. Great stuff from him. Played the long game, and in the end, coming out on top. Jay Fang finished in second place with Nicholas Hurt, who will be very, very angry with himself and not quite sure why he lost so much pace at the end, but ends up dropping to third, at least for the time being. Richie finishing fourth. Reinders finishing in P5. Followed up by Daniel Brewer at P6, Emanara P7, Josh Waring 19 positions gained for him, finishes P8. Max Florence finishes in the P9, and closing out our top 10 for our biggest mover on the server, Barnabas Fazekas in the number 95 Lamborghini. Amazing stuff from him, gaining I think 24 positions in the end for that car. Matt York finishing in P11 with Raheski shortly behind him, but the Audi staying on that position in the end. Avalay did manage to take that position away from the number 41 car in the end, because the 911 seemed to drop an extra position in all of that. So 911 finishing in 15th behind. Oh no, excuse me. Of course, that is Grabowski, the rather rogue placed car in the middle of all of that. As it's all going to start getting very messy as drivers leave the server. So let me regather my bearings. Hans Peter finishing in 16th place. Santima 17th with Giacomelli in 18th. Petrus in 19th, rounding out top 20 was Rimbaud. And then Ratiani, Podens, Russo, Hawkey, and home towards 25th. And then further down the order was Kevin Nars, Arnaud Brun, and Dennis Shops is where my leaderboard ends in all of that. But my goodness, what a race that we ended up having there.
Really good race, and we actually now have someone wanting to join us in the comms box. Annoyingly, everyone's Discord names are different to their racing names, so I'm not entirely sure who this is. So we'll have to see who this is straight away. We're dragging someone in. Hello, welcome to the commentary box. Please try and keep it as swear-free as possible, and let us know who you are.
I'm Jay Fang.
Hey! Rather busy race for you then.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm still so excited. This is my first time to get on podium in AOR race tier 2.
Yeah, well, it was an amazing race from you. You were so close at times of putting her under pressure for the victory. It just looked like, on the undercut strategy, you had the pace advantage initially, but then her, just in that Porsche, we know how strong that car is around the circuit, just managed to eke away, and then the tire advantage that you had started to sort of fall away from you. And it got a bit busy with Richie at points in that, didn't it?
Yeah. So the strategy, the undercut, worked. So I passed like 2 or 3 cars during the pit, but Richie is so close to me, so I have to defend. So I can no longer follow the leader.
I think really good recovery from that spin as well. Obviously, on that final turn, getting a slight bump and ending up on the grass. For a minute, we sort of thought we're going to see you tumbling down the order, but within a lap or two, we were, watching the leaders, and you were in the shot immediately again, ready to strike, and then you were right there when it counted. You sort of recovered from that spin, and were just ready to go, and broke up the Porsches. That's the most important thing. It wasn't a Porsche 123. You got there on the podium, and you say this is your first podium in AOR Tier 2, am I correct?
Yeah. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Porsche is strong in Silverstone, but yes, we had some incidents during the fight, but it was okay. And the last corner, it was a slow corner, so I don't have damage on the car, on the tire, so I can still join the fight.
Yeah, it's a bit unfortunate in that sector as well, isn't it? Because the Porsche, that's one of the areas where that car really is quite pacey in all the tight corners, the acceleration, and I think that with probably combined with maybe some connection issues that we saw tonight, very difficult to judge when you're battling that hard with something. But yeah, amazing stuff, and that last lap as well. Out of nowhere, Rainier was leading the race, and then you were right on his gearbox, pushing him all the way towards Stowe Corner. But it just looked like in that final sector, you just couldn't quite lock onto him for one final challenge, unfortunately.
Yeah, I had the only chance is in Stowe. After that, I don't have advantage versus the Porsche, so yeah, I can't do anything in the second half of the circuit.
No, I've got to say, thank you ever so much for joining us in the commentary booth, and let's say thank you for putting on such a show this evening. It's been really great to see you this far up the grid as well. It's very competitive again this season, as we said in qualifying. I think it was the top 40 drivers were within a second, so the pace of all of you is so similar, so being able to get your way up to second place is absolutely amazing. Circuit of the Americas is the next track coming up next week. How are you feeling about Circuit of the Americas?
I haven't tried my setup yet, so I can't really say anything about it. But I think the M4 is competitive there as well. So let's see.
Days going into it with positivity, that's what you like to see. Thank you ever so much for joining us this evening. Go and make sure you crack open a beer, or I can't even say that because most sim racers are so young these days, so you're probably not even allowed to drink. I don't even know, but go and enjoy yourself, go and sort of revel in the victory. That was a really good race, and say second place in such a competitive league is fantastic. Thank you for joining.
Thank you guys.
Yeah, amazing stuff. Yeah, see you next week, Jay.
Yeah, see you next week. Bye.
Well, what a lovely change to hear from one of our drivers. Usually, we're sort of somewhat abandoned at the end of our race, so it is nice to hear from a driver once in a while. And understandably, Jay Fang in very happy spirits after that, because he was sort of the rogue car that was on pace and all of that, wasn't he? He was the one BMW amongst a sea of Porsches. Of course, Corner Crack unfortunately fell out of competition due to a disconnect. Then Fang got sort of a little bit too close for comfort with that car, and then regaining positions in the latter stages, and to be in with a chance of race victory on the final lap. No wonder he is a happy man. So going into COTA, that car is going to be quick once more. Porsche will have the advantage in all of those acceleration, braking zones, all the tight, twisty stuff. We know that's what the Porsche is extremely good at. But the BMW, it's just a stable, consistent platform with a good chunk of top speed under the bonnet of that car. So, yeah, could very much be within a fight for the win again. Right, well, coming in now with the most important bit of all of this, as, everything on track gets forgotten when it comes to Tim's top pick. And to be honest, it was a bit of a tie-up between one of the newcomers and a firm Tier 2 favourite that's been here a long time. It's got to be said, Matt York's effort today, qualifying in, I'm double-checking this just to make sure, qualified in 30th and ended up coming in 11th place, so 19 places gained. I think that's correct. My math's probably wrong. But that is a gargantuan effort. That is huge amount. But I also want to put a big shout out there to it was Peter. I'm just trying to find his first name. Sorry, Hans Peter. I think.
Yeah, Hans Peter. Really good effort from him as well. New driver here in Tier 2. Really good effort. A massive gain. It's qualified in, what was it, 40th place? Yeah, and ended up coming in, I've lost it on my screen, even though I wrote it down, 16th place. So that's a massive effort as well. So actually, I'm going to go for it. Yorkie will be okay not getting top pick. He understands. I'm giving it to Hans-Peter this evening for my top racer. Really good drive. Did absolutely fantastic. And my top livery goes to car number 25, which was of Rousseau, and that really cool liveried Aston Martin. So they're my top picks. That's what I'm going for. That's a decision made. There's no change in my mind. No after race penalties can be put into place. So yeah, there we go. Although you can always try and be nice to me with the Discord, and I might have a look at your car a bit more and sort of or if you change your livery, let me know. I'll have a look at it and I'll go, yes, interesting.
Yeah, without a doubt. I think definitely some worthy top picks there. I also do want to give a little bit of a shout out to Barnabas Fazekas in that Lamborghini as well. I think finished in the top 10. I think he might have gained the same amount of positions as Hans-Peter. So whilst I don't have an equivalent to Tim's top pick, I will give him certainly a little bit of a bonus shout out as well, because yeah, that was a very, very strong performance in a car which arguably, and as someone that has represented the Lamborghini in a very quick field before, when it's not been the strongest car on circuit, I think was a pretty good effort all round. So yeah, some very big movers in the grid tonight. It really did show that you have to remember it's a 60-minute race, and unfortunately we don't see it all too often, but Tier 2 did have quite the large series of incidents in the opening few laps, and those drivers that kept themselves out of trouble were just a bit more cautious, maybe gave a bit more room, compromised more so than they would have wanted, but in the long run it benefited them and they definitely profited from that. And when you apply that across the duration of a whole season, it definitely all racks up. So really great stuff from all of those guys. And yeah, like we said, we will be heading over to COTA. Doesn't look like we'll have any more interviews tonight. And to the Circuit of the Americas, we'll be going next week. So, of course, it will be Tier 1 once more with Rayton J on Monday. And then myself and Tim will be bringing all of the action for Tier 2 at the same place, same time. If you do want to get involved with the AOR community, and we certainly encourage you to, head over to the apexonline.racing website where you can see all the information on all the leagues, ACC, F1, whatever floats your boat, and you can get involved in all of that. And as we mentioned, there should be some mid-season sign-ups that open up eventually. So even if you weren't able to sign up pre-season, you may be able to sneak your way into a tier at some point over the course of the next few races. And if you just want to be a part of this amazing community and just join a bunch of people that love sim racing, motorsport, cars, everything as much as you do, then do also consider joining the Discord server as well. And yeah, we will be looking forward to some amazing action next week from these guys at COTA. And any final thoughts from you, Tim, after that amazing round 1 of season 12?
Fazekas made up 25 places. I feel really bad. He probably should have made driver of the day, shouldn't he, really? 25 places. I didn't even realise it was that many. So there you go. I said there'd be no change, but now there is. So my final words are Fazekas gets my driver of the day, because that was absolutely insane. So yeah, thank you very much for joining me, mate.
Yeah, always a pleasure, and always a pleasure to have everybody in the chat as well. So thank you everybody so much for watching. We will see you next week then, where we will head to COTA for more action here in the AOR GT3 series in Tier 2. So we shall see you all then. But for tonight then, it's goodbye.
Goodbye.